Coming up on a newscast, the nation's top diplomat travels to Japan for his very first in-person talks with the country's foreign minister. Two are expected to discuss current issues and topics of mutual interest such as security cooperation. U.S. Treasury Secretary emphasized any nuclear test by Pyongyang will be seen as very provocative and will be met with further sanctions. President Yoon is set to meet with Janet Yellen at his office in Yongsan on Tuesday. The South Korean government has expanded eligibility for second booster shots. They now include those 50 or older and adults with pre-existing health conditions. Hello, hope your week's off to a smooth start. I'm Daniel Chen. Let's begin with our top story. Seoul's foreign ministry held talks with its Japanese counterpart on ways to improve ties and possibly arrange a summit. This is the first time in almost half a decade a South Korean top diplomat has visited the country. Kim Da-mi starts us off.
South Korea is speeding up its efforts to improve the icy bilateral ties with Japan, with TAR's a top diplomat in Tokyo for the first time in nearly 5 years. During their first in-person talks on Monday, South Korea's Foreign Minister Park Jin and his Japanese counterpart Yoshimasa Hayashi discussed the mutual interest and put their heads together on ways to pursue a future-oriented relationship. And that included the issue of compensation for the Koreans Japan subjected to wartime forced labor. While the two sides agreed on the need for resolving the matter at an early date, Park pledged to what he could do so that there are desirable solutions before the assets of related Japanese firms are liquidated.
There are many good opinions coming out. We will explain this situation to Japan and put together all our wisdom to find the most reasonable solution.
Revitalizing people-to-people exchanges also topped Monday's talk, including a visa waiver between the two countries. The two diplomats further agreed to deal firmly with North Korea's latest military ambitions and beef up cooperation with the U.S. in pursuit of diplomatic solutions. Hopes are also high that Park's 3-day visit could include a sit-down with Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, which could pave the way for the first summit between the current leaders of the two countries. Park also plans to pay respects to Japan's late former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
Washington has further sanctions that can be adopted against North Korea. That's coming from the U.S. Treasury Secretary, who emphasized any nuclear test by the regime would be seen as very provocative, but no specifics were provided. Janet Yellen is set to meet with President Yoon at his office in Yongsan on Tuesday. According to South Korea's top office, ways to deal with economic conditions as well as inflation will likely top the agenda. The visiting official is also expected to meet with the nation's finance chief and the central banker. The nation's finance chief shrugged off concerns for now about the dramatic outflow of capital as the gap in interest rates between countries widens. Speaking to CNBC at the G20 meeting in Bali, Cho Kyung-ho pointed out capital outflows are not caused by a single economic factor like interest rate gap. He also mentioned there's been a gap in rates a few times before that did not cause capital outflows. The minister emphasized the most important thing is Seoul's economic fundamentals, which fared better in the current situation than those of some other countries. But it did acknowledge that rising rates in the U.S. could lead to further outflows from Korea. Housing stability and tackling energy crisis were the key policy agenda at the nation's top office. This comes as President Yoon continues to receive briefings from cabinet members. Yoon Jung-min brings the highlights from that session.
Providing more homes to meet rising demand. The key housing policy under the new Yoon administration is to provide at least 2.5 million in urban areas and around key transportation hubs nationwide. Details will be unveiled next month.
The Land Ministry will put all-out efforts to weather the economic crisis and stabilize people's livelihoods.
To ease the debt burden of the lower income bracket, the government will shift loans with the high interest rates to lower ones and switch to fixed-rate home mortgage loans. Various environmental assessments will be integrated to shorten the approval time needed for new buildings.
President Yoon asked his land minister to prioritize housing stabilization and housing welfare, which are key to people's livelihoods.
The Land Ministry aims to help more Korean businesses tap into overseas infrastructure markets, branding it as K-Smart Infra, and eyeing new opportunities in the Middle East, Ukraine, and Iraq. It'll also push ahead with commercializing Level 3 autonomous cars by the year's end and those of Level 4 by 2027. In 3 years' time, South Korea is looking at the use of a full-blown urban air mobility. President Yoon was also briefed on ways to tackle the energy challenge facing the entire world. His Environment Ministry's plan is to make the most out of nuclear power, reallocate carbon credits among industries, and tackle environment pollution by cutting ultra-fine dust levels by 30% within the next 5 years. To do so, more incentives will be provided when there is a shift to clean fuel or scrapping of old diesel vehicles. How to fight the affordable housing and energy crises at once. That was what Monday's policy briefings were all about here at the presidential office, while for the rest of the week, the president will focus on the nation's foreign policy, security, and national defense. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
The ruling party and the government held back-to-back meetings on ways to fight inflation and boost the economy. They've agreed to cut taxes for businesses, company employees, and homeowners. Yoon outlines what was discussed.
Everything is becoming more expensive these days, but salaries aren't going up. With the people in South Korea hit hard by rising inflation and interest rates, the ruling People Power Party and the government have agreed to a major revision to the taxation scheme.
Despite a decline in tax revenues, we will put all our efforts into protecting people in the low-income brackets, as well as small business owners, hoping to ease the burden they feel.
For one, easing the excessive real estate taxes on homeowners put in place during the previous administration. On Sunday, the party and the government agreed to allow homeowners to switch to a fixed-rate mortgage if their home is worth less than 400 million won, or around $300,000, starting in September. There'll be revisions to the income tax scheme for corporate workers for the first time in 15 years, too.
We called for an expansion to the scope of those belonging to low-income brackets so that more workers are eligible for tax benefits.
Also, revisions are underway to ease the burden of eating out for corporate workers. Currently, 100,000 Korean won, or roughly $80 from a worker's pay, is classed as business meal allowance and is exempt from taxation. But a new scheme could increase that allowance by twofold. In the meantime, the government would also push for lowering corporation tax to facilitate economic growth in the long term.
The goal of these revisions is to enhance corporate tax competitiveness, independence, and creativity.
The goal is to meet the standards of other OECD countries, most likely from the current 25% to 22%. And the government will lower inheritance tax for small and mid-sized companies to ensure smoother family businesses. Based on what's been discussed for the past 2 days, the Finance Ministry will announce the finalized measures on Thursday. 이경은, Arirang News.
The government is warning workers to leave a dry dock they are occupying at Okpo shipyard in the country's southeast, where they've been protesting for higher pay. The finance chief called the action illegal and that it will result in criminal punishment and compensation claims. Okpo is the world's biggest dockyard. It's used by Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering, but has been occupied by the workers since last month. The minister warned their actions could damage the trust built up by South Korea's shipbuilding industries. His statement was joined by the ministers of Justice, Interior and Safety, Trade and Labor. Rival party floor leaders reached an agreement on a new deadline to name chairs of the National Assembly's committees to enable Parliament to get some work done. In the meantime, they'll give policy speeches that will mark the start of the new session and question officials from the unit administration about state affairs. Kim Bo-kyung explains further.
Despite more than a month of efforts, the National Assembly's committee chair posts still remain vacant. They had set last Sunday, Constitution Day on July 17th, as a deadline for filling the posts. That deadline has passed, but the two floor leaders of the main rival parties have vowed to fill the posts by this Thursday, the 21st. The two parties have also agreed on starting other activities to get the 21st National Assembly up and running.
Plenary sessions will take place for negotiating body speeches and government hearings.
Having the majority in the legislative branch, the Democratic Party of Korea will deliver a speech on July 20th, and People Power Party will do their speech on the following day. From next Monday to Wednesday, lawmakers will also be questioning the Yoon administration on state affairs, spanning major areas such as diplomacy, the economy, and culture. To tackle the economic crisis, the two sides have also reached a deal to form a special committee.
On July 20th, Wednesday at 10 a.m., we decided to form a special committee on stabilizing people's livelihoods at the plenary session.
The special committee, headed by a lawmaker from People Power Party, will consist of 13 members, 6 from both the People Power Party and the Democratic Party of Korea, and 1 from a minor party. The agendas will include urgent economic issues such as expanding oil tax cuts and tax deductions for business meals. Though the rival parties have vowed to get the National Assembly fully back to work by Thursday, there's still a chance that negotiations over the committee leadership votes will take longer to resolve. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Starting Monday here in the nation, more people are allowed to get booster shot, the second booster shots that is. This comes as authorities expanded eligibility to include anyone 50 or older, as well as adults with pre-existing health conditions. Yeon brings the updates.
From Monday, more people can get their second COVID-19 booster shot. Previously, only people aged 60 and above and those with weak immune systems were eligible. But now, people aged 50 or older, adults with pre-existing health conditions, and those living in facilities for the disabled and the homeless can get the second booster. Health officials have recommended that people get the jab at least 4 months or 120 days after their previous dose. There are a few exceptions, though. People who need to urgently go abroad can receive a second booster if 3 months or 90 days have elapsed since they had their previous shot. Reservations for the new round of vaccinations open on Monday, with shots being administered from August 1st. However, those able to book leftover vaccine shots can get their booster earlier than this date, depending on availability. South Korean authorities decided to expand the eligibility of second booster shots as COVID-19 figures creep up. On Monday, 26,299 new infections were reported. This was double the amount logged last week and also the highest figure for a Monday in 12 weeks. Yoon, Arirang News.
Elsewhere around the world, Russian missiles have struck a city where Ukrainian troops had previously fended off Moscow's attempts to capture it. Meanwhile, President Zelensky fired 2 important figures in his administration. Lee Si-hoo has the latest.
Early on Sunday, Russian missiles struck a shipbuilding center in the southern Ukrainian city of Mykolaiv. That's according to the Associated Press on Sunday. Mykolaiv is located near the Black Sea coast between Russia-occupied Crimea and the main Ukrainian port of Odessa. The city has faced regular missile strikes in recent weeks after it had fended off Russian attempts to capture the city earlier in the war. The city's mayor Alexander Senkevich said there was no immediate information about casualties. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Zelensky on Sunday said that he dismissed the head of the country's domestic security agency, SBU, Ivan Bakhanov, and the state prosecutor general Irina Venediktova. Zelensky said that more than 60 employees of the SBU and the prosecutor's office are working against the state and accused many of treason and collaborating with Russia.
Such an array of crimes against the foundations of the national security of the state and the connections detected between the employees of the security forces of Ukraine and the special services of Russia pose very serious questions.
However, Reuters reported on Monday that according to a Ukrainian senior presidential aide, the 2 officials had not been formally dismissed but rather suspended pending investigations. Also, according to CNN's report on Monday, Zelensky has named temporary leaders of the 2 departments. Meanwhile, on Monday, the European Union is to mull over tightening sanctions against Russia. The EU has thus far approved 6 packages of sanctions on Russia. The 7th is expected to include targeting Russian gold imports into the EU. According to the Wall Street Journal on Saturday, SpaceX's satellite internet service Starlink has kept frontline Ukrainian troops connected where regular cell networks failed. SpaceX sent thousands of its Starlink kits to Ukraine, which uses satellites to provide internet to people on the ground.
Ukraine is serving as a test ground for the service as SpaceX's Elon Musk is trying to sell it in other countries. 이시후, Arirang News.
South Korea is extending its ban on travel to select countries for 6 more months until next January. This includes Iraq, Ukraine, Somalia, Afghanistan, Yemen, Syria, and Libya. It also applies to areas in Russia and Belarus within 30 kilometers of the Ukraine border, as well as parts of the Philippines, namely the Zamboanga Peninsula, Sulu, Basilan, and Tawi-Tawi. The government cites security concerns, including risk of terrorism. At the world's largest military air show, South Korea's Black Eagles won top awards. They showed off aerobatic flight skills using a domestically developed advanced trainer jet model. Bae-yeon-ji turns the spotlight to the team and their T-50s.
South Korean fighter planes loop and spin across the sky to create the shape of the Korean flag. Spectators cheer as the planes also leave trails in the shape of a heart and an arrow going straight through it. They're the Black Eagles, an air display team from the South Korean Air Force. For 4 days from last Friday, the team took part in the Royal International Air Tattoo, or RIAT, the world's biggest air show held in England.
I feel very honored to take part in the world's biggest air show. Our team will be showing the amazing skills that the South Korean fighter pilots have and the power of our country's T-50 jets to all those who gathered here from all over the world.
The Black Eagles also demonstrated a formation where they scattered upwards in the air, leaving blue and red trails. One spectator and a fan of the Black Eagles says this is something that no other team has shown.
And I do like that formation they break where they do the rolls as well. I can't remember what that's called, but that's a really unique one. I've not seen someone do that before.
The team pulled off a total of 24 different air maneuvers during its performance and won the King Hussein Memorial Sword for the best overall flying demonstration among all teams from 34 countries. The team was also given the As the Crow Flies trophy for the best flying demonstration as judged by the members of the Friends of the Royal International Air Tattoo. Bae-yeon-ji, Arirang News.
Eating in restaurants is becoming more expensive, so people are looking for cheaper ways to get lunch while at work or school. Many are turning to convenience stores or buying prepared meals online. Shin Se-byuk zooms in on this phenomenon.
Checking out lunch boxes at a convenience store has become a daily routine for Park Jung-woo. Grabbing lunch at a restaurant had been his usual choice, but now doing that would put him over his lunch budget.
Consumer prices have gone up really high these days. So instead of going to a restaurant for lunch, I go to convenience stores. It has lots of benefits. You can eat fast, and most of all, it's cheap.
And there are many others who are in the same boat.
Gukbap used to cost around 5,000 won, but the price has now doubled, even tripled. It's become unaffordable. So I pack my own lunch or grab a quick bite at a convenience store.
Lunch would cost around 8,000 won before, but now it rises to 9, even 10,000. So I go to all-you-can-eat buffets or convenience stores.
What these people are experiencing is called lunchflation, the rising cost of lunch amid surging inflation.
According to Statistics Korea, dining out costs soared 8% on year in June, the largest increase in 30 years. In fact, for Koreans, some of the most popular lunch items, such as kimbap and jjajangmyeon, also their prices rise. And now more people are heading to convenience stores looking for cheaper options.
With more people stopping at convenience stores during lunch breaks, 4 major convenience store chains in Korea have all seen a rise in lunchbox sales on air. This became more evident as the month went by in tandem with the soaring consumer prices. Lunchflation has also boosted online food sales as consumers decide to purchase meals in advance at affordable prices. Data from an online grocery shopping mall shows that sales increased significantly during the second quarter of this year. By item, sales of corn dogs tripled, frozen ready meals jumped by over 60%, sandwiches grew 30%, and other meal substitute options such as protein bars and bread also climbed. An official from the company explains that these items are popular, particularly among the economically active population, the group that's hit hardest by lunchflation.
The sales of quick and easy food items during the second quarter grew rapidly compared to the first quarter, jumping by 50 to 70%. And the top consumers are office workers and women in their 30s and 40s.
An expert explains this growing popularity of lunchboxes came as a result of office workers and students trying to find a better lunch option.
Office workers try hard to find well-balanced yet affordable lunch options, and lunchboxes are the go-to options for them because they offer various choices at cheaper prices.
As for lunchflation, the expert says it won't settle yet, not until the end of this year, citing skyrocketing inflation across the world caused by geopolitical uncertainties as a reason why. 신새벽, Arirang News.
The Seoul Queer Culture Festival was held over the weekend. There was a parade on Saturday, but it was almost drowned out by large protests. Kim Hyun-sung takes us to the scene.
Rainbow-colored flags in the heart of Seoul. Seoul Queer Culture Festival has come back in full after being disrupted by the pandemic over the past 2 years. In central Seoul's Junggu district on Saturday, people marched with pride.
And as if to make up for lost time, a huge crowd has flocked to Seoul Plaza in support of LGBTQ rights. But right outside the fence that's surrounding Plaza, some Christian and conservative groups are staging protests, and the demonstrators are so loud that their sound is overpowering the sounds within the festival.
Actually, my parents go to church, and their church is also protesting outside, so it's just a shame.
Police lines were deployed in case tensions escalated and to keep people safe. But despite protests, the Pride movement has grown year after year. Around 135,000 people attended this year's festival.
Around 20 years ago, when we first did the parade, around 200 to 300 people took part in the parade. So we've grown a lot in 20 years.
As more people came out with their sexualities, support also grew. Allies, Buddhist monks, and family members began to take part in the event as well.
So I wanted to express my solidarity with the people of this community here in Korea and show that there's an opportunity to make change.
We're giving out these 5 coloured bracelets because, like these colours that become more beautiful when mixed together, our society will become happier and healthier if we embrace people with different sexual identities and preferences.
My kid is transgender, but when I look at our society, so many people just hate and oppress sexual minorities when they don't know anything about them. I came here because I wanted to help.
The day of the parade was hot, humid, and rainy. But that didn't stop the long tail of people marching with pride. The festival will go on until the end of this month, with Queer Film Festival hosting movie screenings this Friday to Sunday. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
Monsoonal showers will continue across the south until tomorrow morning. The good news is that showers have gotten much lighter over time. Until tomorrow, Jeju Island can expect about 5 to 40 millimeters. Gyeongsangnam-do province can expect 5 to 20. The rest of southern regions, including Chungcheong-do provinces, will see less than 5 millimeters. Mountainous regions of Gangwon-do province will see passing showers until the afternoon. Although skies will be mostly overcast after the rain, the sun's UV radiation will be intense. Most parts of the country will see UV ray index in the high to very high range. For Jeju Island and parts of the south coast, UV ray index will be in the extreme range. So do consider wearing a hat or sunscreen when heading out. Morning lows will be higher tomorrow, and some regions may see tropical nights. Lows in Seoul and Gwangju will be kicking off at 24 degrees Celsius. Daily highs in Seoul will reach 30 degrees, Daejeon and Gwangju 31, Daegu will be hot at 34 degrees. For the remainder of this week, southern regions will see frequent showers. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
And that's all from us. As always, thank you for watching.